Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. Okay, just need to let everybody know the live stream is getting ready to go on. What's going on, Rudy Dog, Sean S., T-Mac, D. Woodward? I'm going to get started on tonight's live stream, but before I get started on tonight's live stream topic, I'm going to be hosting another live stream tomorrow night at 9 p.m., and I will be talking about Dan Dido finally being fired from DC Comics. So you definitely want to be there for that live stream because I'm going to be discussing what happened to Dan Dido. And thankfully, he's finally gone from DC Comics. Now, tonight's live stream is going to be dealing with what I call the Black History Month hot mess, because a long time ago, Black History Month was a month that celebrated the best as related to Black people and their accomplishments. Unfortunately, for this new decade, 2020, we have had one of the most embarrassing Black History Months in the history of Black History Month. Now, again, Black History Month was originally designed to celebrate all of the successes and accomplishments of Black people in the past and to focus on building up Black people for the future. But what happened this Black History Month seems to be that people have forgotten what Black History Month is all about, and they have participated in some of the most dysfunctional behavior I have ever seen. It's like they have absolutely no reverence for Black History Month or Black history or even their heritage, because I have seen Black people literally acting like buck dancing, bojangling, step and fetch it Negroes from the antebellum South. And what's really sad about it is these are supposed to be our educated, best, and brightest Black people, and they're acting like buck dancing, bojangling slaves from the antebellum South period, and not ever thinking about how their behavior is reflecting on the world. Now, the first incident I saw that was embarrassing for Black History Month was after the tragic passing of Kobe Bryant. Now, after this tragic passing of Kobe Bryant, some of these Black females out here decided that it was appropriate while people were mourning the death of Kobe Bryant, and that man had not even been dead only a few hours, that they were going to come out here and try to speak negatively about Kobe Bryant. And when I watched those videos where these Black women were speaking hatefully about Kobe Bryant, I just had to shake my head, because this was some of the most depraved behavior I ever saw in my life. And to see people participating in this depraved behavior, not only at a few hours after the passing of Kobe Bryant's um, on in that tragic helicopter crash and his daughter Gianna and those seven other people, that was disturbing to me. But what was more disturbing was the fact that these people thought that this was appropriate to do. Again, not thinking about this man's life or his legacy. All it was them expressing their vitriol and anger towards Kobe Bryant, all because of who he was married to, not thinking about all of the positive accomplishments this man made during his short time on this planet. And again, these people didn't even think about Kobe Bryant's family or even his other three children and what they were going through. It was all about them expressing all of their anger and vitriol at this black man because he was married to a non-black woman. So that really kicked off the all of the real dysfunction we've seen over the past, 20 some odd days. And again, this was one of the sickest displays I ever saw of those black women and these white feminists who actually started this whole ball rolling. But again, these black women didn't even think about, hey, this is February, this is Black History Month, and maybe we should show some respect not only for Kobe Bryant's family, but we need to show some respect for the month of February because as it being Black History Month, this is supposed to be the month where we're supposed to celebrate our best and brightest, and we're supposed to be on our best behavior. But no, these black women wanted to go out here and put on a display that practically tarnished the image of black women and breathe brand new life into old stereotypes. Now, that was the start of the month with just the beginning, but later on we had an incident at Barnes & Noble that was equally troubling. Now, your Barnes & Noble, in its attempt to show how woke it was and how self-aware they were regarding black people, they thought they would go out here and celebrate Black History Month by going out here and putting blackface covers on white classic literature. Now, this type of celebration of Black History Month was one of the most disturbing things I ever saw because it clearly showed me how deeply disconnected the people who work at Barnes & Noble truly are. I mean, you don't celebrate Black History Month by putting blackface images on books written by white writers. No, how is that celebrating Black History Month when you're putting an image of a black-faced character from a book written by a white writer who practically, in many cases, wrote these books during periods like the colonial period and wrote these books oftentimes with a lot of racist and ethnic stereotypes in them. I mean, many of these books that they put blackface on, like your Peter Pan, featured colonial type viewpoints of black people. And then you had books like Frankenstein, where you have a black man depicted as a monster. Now, that's a racist image because oftentimes, again, a lot of times black people, a lot of these racists, they see black men as monsters. And to have Frankenstein monster presented on a book as a black man, that's a racist image when you think about it critically. Unfortunately, the people at Barnes & Noble, in their attempts to show how woke they are, showed the world how racist they are and how out of touch they were as related to what Black History Month was all about. Because Black History Month was supposed to be about, again, celebrating the accomplishments of our best and brightest black people and putting those accomplishments up as a showcase for younger black boys and black children and black girls and black children to see, and for young black people to have something to see that would inspire them to pursue something in their own lives. And how can people be inspired when a company like Barnes and Noble goes out here and decides to put blackface books of on their covers featuring white authors? That's a slap in the face to all those black customers who go over to these stores to go out here and buy black literature at Barnes and Noble, and it's a slap in the face to all of those black people out here who who are out here and they support Barnes and Noble. I mean, to put that on there and say this is how we're going to celebrate Black History Month, that was just one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. And again, these woke people showed us again how racist they are, because if they really wanted to celebrate Black History Month and they wanted to really do a promotion that would get people excited, they could have started with a plant like a campaign that says here and now, where they go out here and they celebrate old classic black authors, and then they have a table featuring new indie writers like myself, and they could have easily gone out here and promoted new books like I'm producing, like John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose. They could have promoted those books at Barnes and Noble, and they could have helped get some new black writers some exposure and help those new black writers be discovered by the readers of Barnes and Noble. Unfortunately, Barnes and Noble wanted to show how woke they are, and they participated in one of the most embarrassing incidents to ever transpire at retail for Black History Month. If you want an example of how not to do a promotion for Black History Month, you look at what Barnes and Noble did for Black History Month. I mean, this was completely egregious, and it was absolutely disgusting for them to go out here and do this. And again, they could have easily promoted a new author like myself, because this year I'm launching John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, with regular and variant covers. And I'm also launching in April ISIS, The Main Event. I have a whole bunch of books on Amazon, again, that they could have put on their table, and they could have not only on Amazon, Barnes & Noble at their table, and they could have made this into something where we celebrate a brand new author and help that new author find, and those new authors find an audience. Now you can pick up John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose. You can pick up the A cover from Mike Williams on Amazon, and you can also pick up the Josh Howard cover on Amazon as well. I'm gonna leave a link in the chat, and you can pick up both of those books in the chat. Glad to see you here, Luciano. Saw you. And okay, I've left links to 3 of the books. ISIS, The Main Event. I'm trying to do that. Let's do it. Okay, it's not letting me do it for ISIS, The Main Event, but ISIS, The Main Event is available on Amazon as well. But those are just the tip of the iceberg for the embarrassing incidents I have seen over this Black History Month, seeing those black women actually disrespect Kobe Bryant, seeing the Barnes and Noble, black covers, and to see people just, again, having no respect for Black History Month. It's just really sad to see. Now, the other incident that really disgusted me about Black History Month this year, in addition to the feminists and the black women who made those hate-filled videos regarding your Kobe Bryant, was the way Gayle King behaved during an interview with Lisa Leslie. Now, this interview was one of the most reprehensible things I have seen in journalism. I mean, the way Gayle King acted during that interview was absolutely disgusting because to ask a question like she asked, it was completely inappropriate. I mean, to ask a question about that act of sexual violence, again, that was already was proven that there were no charges filed, and again, just a few days after this man's death, that was a complete betrayal of journalistic integrity, and that was one of the most disturbing things I ever saw. Now, thankfully, Lisa Leslie showed great grace and great character by not answering the question in a way that would malign Kobe Bryant's legacy. But Gayle King's just asking that question, it was just completely inappropriate. And to watch her then deflect and say it was the network, that was a deflection. And it's a deflection that showed how cowardly your Gayle King was, because it's clear to me that she willfully and intentionally wanted to do something to malign the legacy and the name of Kobe Bryant, because what she wanted to do was see if Lisa Leslie was going to be down with degrading and maligning the name of Kobe Bryant. But Lisa Leslie did not go along, and it all made Gayle King to be revealed to be the mammy that she actually was. And then we had your Snoop Dogg, who came out and in the beginning showed some backbone. But then what happened was, when the black matriarchy started putting pressure on him, instead of holding his ground like a man, what he did was start buck dancing and bow jangling. And that was the other sad thing about the whole Gayle King thing drama, was he came out, he called her out, he actually did the right thing, and then he started buck dancing and bojangling. Glad to see you here, Nightingale Wednesday Nightmare. Glad to see you here. Mobar 7170, I'm glad you got the copy of Isis, My Sister, My Frenemy. I hope you enjoy it. It was one of the Isis series books that people really liked, but a lot of people complained about the cover. I'm hoping that the new cover gets it some sales, but I put new refresh covers on Isis the Beauty Myth and Isis My Sister, My Frenemy. I'll put links to those books in a minute. But when I look at the way Gayle King behaved, I mean, here we're supposed to be one of these so-called black females we're supposed to celebrate as an acclaimed journalist. And here she is compromising her journalistic integrity in order to get brownie points with these white supremacists who work at CBS by asking, as I see it, a question with malice aforethought about a crime and pushing a narrative that white feminists know was a lie. Because what white feminists wanted to do was they wanted to tarnish the name and legacy of Kobe Bryant by making the claim that Kobe Bryant was a rapist. However, Kobe Bryant was never seen as a rapist, because after the police did their investigation, they found that no crime was committed. And again, there was no factual evidence to back up any of these claims that these white feminists were making regarding Kobe Bryant as related to any sort of sexual violence. So that's what made Gayle King asking that question horrifically inappropriate to Lisa Leslie. She, as a journalist, knew what the facts were as related to the evidence. And as someone who knew what the facts were as related to the evidence, it was not for her to try to inject opinions that these white feminists had into an interview, because a journalist is supposed to present information in an objective manner, and they are supposed to present facts objectively to whoever they're interviewing so that they can get objective answers that allow us to get facts as related to any sort of case. So your Gayle King, again, embarrassed Black women and embarrassed the Black community by asking such an inappropriate question to Lisa Leslie. And I was, again, deeply disgusted because, again, here we have Black History Month, and all of these Black people, they're making history not by going out here and accomplishing something positive. No, they're making history because they are buck dancing and bojangling and cooning and buffooning in the worst way. And to see Gayle King go out here and, again, ask that type of question, it's one of the most disturbing things I ever saw in my life. And again, it just was a complete betrayal of everything as related to journalism. Now, your Snoop Dogg, when he first came out and checked Gayle King, he showed some points as related to being a man. He showed that he was going to have a little bit of character. Unfortunately, he showed how he was just another slave to white supremacy, because sooner rather than later, what he did once the Black matriarchy started to come after him is he started to bow down. He then bent the knee and then started to submit because he didn't want to wind up upsetting all of the Black females who are a part of the Black matriarchy. And he went out here and apologized to Gayle King, even though he was actually in the right. Now, your Snoop Dogg thought by making this compromise, he was going to be able to save his career. But ironically, what happened was he showed everybody what he really was: another buck dancing, bojangling slave who was bought and paid for by the same corporate oligarch slave masters that bought and paid for your Gayle King. So they were both showing how they were bought and paid for, because once your Snoop Dogg wound up submitting to your Gayle King, and apologizing, he showed the whole world how weak a Black man he was and how he wasn't a Black man anybody needed to respect. Because if he had just stood there and stood his ground, he would have actually gained more respect from people. But by going out here and bowing the knee to the Black matriarchy, a subsidiary of white supremacy, he showed the whole world how weak he actually was, and how, as a man, he wasn't anybody we needed to respect. Now, speaking of rappers who bowed the knee to white supremacy, we had two more rappers who had a major milestone for the worse as related to buck dancing and bojangling this month. And these were two of the greatest rappers of all time. And it was really sad to see your Rakim bow the knee to your white supremacy by stating that Eminem was one of the best rappers out here. And that was really sad because Rakim, if you knew how great a rapper he was back in the 1980s, you would look at this and say to yourself, why is this man bowing down to Eminem and saying that he's great when Rakim was part of one of the greatest eras of hip hop, as they call it, the New Jack Swing / era of rap. And in that era of rap, we saw rap evolve from just basic rhymes to masterful wordplay, and Rakim was one of the greatest lyricists of that mid 1980s, early 1990s period. I mean, if you listened to songs like Follow the Leader and Microphone Fiend, and I mean, there was another one, I can't remember the third one, In the Ghetto. I mean, Rakim, he can do more with lyrics than Eminem could even think to do. And as I see it, your Eminem isn't even fit to wash the skid mark out of Vanilla Ice's drawers. I mean, he's not even on the level of a Rakim, but you have Rakim bowing the knee and saying that he's one of the greats when he is nowhere near any of the all-time great rappers. And again, he's buck dancing and bojangling because he wants to get crumbs from the white slave master's table. And that's sad because black people like myself, we elevated Rakim, we built Rakim up, and we supported Rakim over the years because everything that Rakim talked about in his rhymes was extremely positive, and he's presented one of the strongest images of black manhood and masculinity. And that was really sad to see him compromise himself, and as I see it, compromise everything he believed in for, for a little bit of crumbs from the slave master's table. And that was, again, when you think about Rakim, if you know who he is, he's a Muslim. And again, a Muslim black man is supposed to have a sense of black pride, a sense of black self-worth, and a sense of awareness. And to see a man compromise those intangibles of his manhood in order to get some crumbs, that's really sad because, again, it was not white people who created Rakim and made him a superstar. It was black people who made him a superstar and an icon. And it was brothers and sisters out here who were buying his records and making him into a man who was a superstar. I mean, when I think about that, I mean, that's one of the saddest things that's a part of this Black History Month is, again, watching one of our icons make history by going and buck dancing and bojangling. And that's just, again, really embarrassing to see. Now, the other rapper, who compromised himself this Black History Month was your Big Daddy Kane. And your Big Daddy Kane, again, came from that same New Jack Swing / silver, as I call it, silver age of hip hop, where we had the lyricism going on, we had the lyrical wordplay, and Big Daddy Kane was one of the masters of wordplay. I mean, if you think about a guy who masterfully could make rhymes, I mean, there was nobody who could pass Big Daddy Kane's flow back in 1988, 1989, and 1990. I mean, if you listen to songs like Ain't No Half Steppin', Smooth Operator, there's a couple of them because I have them on MP3, and I might have to go into iTunes to go see which ones, because there was a whole bunch of them. But Big Daddy Kane was, if you listen to his songs, he truly is a master of wordplay. I mean, here was a guy who did a duet with Rudy Ray Moore, and he's known for just, again, masterful wordplay. If you listen to songs like Wrath of Cain, Warm It Up Cain, Calling Mr. Welfare, I Get the Job Done. I mean, when you think about those classic songs, I mean, his wordplay, his flow, it's amazing when you think about what he has contributed to hip hop. I mean, he practically is a living legend. And for him to say Eminem is the Kobe Bryant of hip hop, that just shows, he's not. It's him buck dancing and bojangling. I'm going to get to Young Gifted and Black Rudy Dog in a minute, but I really wanted to get all of his great songs out there, because if you listen to Kane, you will see some great lyricism. I'm glad you liked Temptation of John Haynes, Rebel Against Defeat. That's one of the books I really put my heart into, and it's the start of the SJS Direct universe, but it was a book that I really put my heart into back in 2005, and I wanted to, make it the very, very best it could be. And I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad you see it as great writing. You guys can pick up, pick up Temptation of John Haynes on Amazon and paperback and see what Rebel Against Defeat is saying about Temptation of John Haynes. But when I think about Big Daddy Kane, he's one of those rappers that, again, inspired me to become, more proficient in wordplay and learn more about wordplay overall. I mean, when I think about Big Daddy Kane, I mean, he was one of those rappers like Cool G Rap that was very influential because when I saw the way that they would play with words, when I saw the way they would make words, flow, and he's saying that Eminem is the Kobe Bryant of rap. When again, you're Kobe Bryant, sadly, he has passed on. But again, Eminem is not fit to even again wash the skid mark out of Vanilla Ice's drawers because your Eminem is a mediocre rapper and Marshall Mathers is extremely mediocre. I mean, he is just mediocre when you compare him to truly great rappers in the game. And I can think of other guys who could have been the Kobe Bryant of hip hop. For example, if you want to talk about great rappers of the 2000s, Ludacris comes to the top of my list as a guy who would be like your Kobe Bryant. I mean, when I think of Ludacris, that's a guy who I would say is in that range because Ludacris is a guy who when he started out in the 2000s around Eminem's time, he was the guy who started talking about dropping bows on people. He had his own sound, and his lyrical wordplay was absolutely spectacular. When you think about Ludacris, he was an icon. I mean, he was practically everywhere in the early 2000s. If I want to think about a rapper who is absolutely great and who would be considered Kobe Bryant of hip hop, it would be Ludacris. And when you think about, I think Ludacris was in the Fast and Furious movies, so he has had one of those all-time great careers. He's had great wordplay, and he created his own sound and style. I mean, you could also talk about the guys from Outkast and say that they could have been in that range, but because the guys from Outkast also had their own sound and they brought their own spin to hip hop. So when I think about that, what Big Daddy Kane said, again, it's a complete compromise of everything that he said that he stood for because he was supposed to be, again, a 5% Muslim and he was supposed to be about Black empowerment. But here you have two men who were supposed to be 5% Muslims, 5% Muslims who believed in the philosophies like Malcolm X believed in, and here they are buck dancing and bojangling for Eminem and trying to elevate Eminem to a higher level above themselves. A complete compromise of everything they said they believed in, and that was quite troubling to me because, again, I would never think a pro-Black Muslim who was about Black empowerment, like what Big Daddy Kane spoke in his song, Young, Gifted, and Black, would be sitting there talking about Eminem and talking about how great he was. Now, again, when you listen to the song, Young, Gifted, and Black, there's a lyric that he talks about being crossed over, lost over here, and now get the hell out. And when I look at Big Daddy Kane, he has crossed over and lost over, and he's the sellout that he talked about in that lyric. And when you listen to Young, Gifted, and Black, you look at how he's behaving, and again, a complete betrayal of everything he said he was about in that song. Now, in that song, Young, Gifted, and Black, you hear Big Daddy Kane pretty practically talking about Black pride. He's got in the beginning of the song, he's got, I think, was it Elijah Muhammad in the beginning, before the lyrics start, and to see him go from talking about being young, gifted, and Black and being proud of his Blackness and standing up for being Black. And when I listen to him, he's a lot like that whole lyric where he talked about, you try to sue us and man, you should be home with arthritis. That's he's become that guy. He said, you try to sue us and you try to fight us, man, you should be sitting home with arthritis. He has become that guy that he talked about because he was talking about these old musicians who were suing them for sampling back in the day. And now he's actually become that guy because he's willing to bend the knee like those other like those old musicians in order to get those crumbs from the master's table. And again, it's really sad to see them all begging for those crumbs from the master's table, because it's just sad to see a man who was considered
70% of women stated that
who was considered a legend, you know, going out here and bending the knee for his slave master. Thank you for the donation, Mobile Maze. Really appreciate it. Because it seems like there's something wrong with my chat, so I'm looking at it on Safari now. But it was sad to see Kane, go out like that, because I grew up with Big Daddy Kane. I grew up with Rakim. I grew up, with all of these great rappers, and to see them actually betray everything that they say that they stood for, it's really sad to see them, go out like that, and see them go out the way they did, because to see them go out the way that they did, I mean, I was really saddened to see all those great rappers, again, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, two masters of the craft, bowing the knee to, as I see it, mediocre Marshall Mathers. Again, a dude who couldn't wash a skid mark out of Vanilla Ice's drawers, a rapper who is extremely mediocre in terms of lyrics, in terms of wordplay, and a guy who tries to pose like he's some sort of street black guy, a guy with, as I see it, no talent, because he has no voice of his own. I mean, at least with Vanilla Ice, I can say that he has his own voice. Beastie Boys had their own voice, and even Crazy Town had their own voice back in 1999. But your Eminem is just a wannabe black guy, and it's clear to me that there's some agenda as related to him. And just like Justin Timberlake, he's another culture vulture who is out here trying to steal black culture, and they're trying to use him the way they used Elvis to steal rock and roll back in the 1950s. Yeah, Third Base also had their own voice, and that was the difference between those white rappers back in the day. They all had their own voices. They weren't trying to pose like they were black, and they weren't trying to create an imitation black sound. I mean, if you listen to Beastie Boys, if you listen to Third Base, if you listen to Vanilla Ice and Crazy Town, they all have their own sound. Yes, they do raps, but their raps are their own thing. So they're not trying to go out here and make somebody else's sound and trying to sound black. They're trying to make their own voice and use their own style. So that's one of the things when I look at their music, it's distinct, but Eminem, he just tries to pose. And what they want to do is use Eminem as somebody, as the face like Elvis, to steal black music, and make it into white music. So what they want to do is go out here and use Eminem like Elvis to go out here and take the rap genre. And what's really sad is we have black people like Big Daddy Kane and Rakim looking to sell out the rap genre. And that's the saddest thing, because again, we created rap music and we elevated people like Big Daddy Kane and Rakim and made them superstars. But then instead of them valuing black people and our accomplishments, they took what we said had value and they devalued it. And that's the saddest thing to see about this during Black History Month, is black people taking their own accomplishments and devaluing our accomplishments. And that's one of the most sad things for me to see, is to see two of our great rappers who we elevated and made into superstars. We made them into superstars. We made them icons, and they were part of our history, and we valued them, but they didn't value themselves. And again, 5%ers who are supposed to be about black empowerment and black pride showed how much self-hatred they had during this Black History Month. And that's the saddest thing about this whole Big Daddy Kane and Rakim praising Eminem is that we made them again superstars and icons. We listened to them on black radio stations like 98.7 Kiss, which sadly is no longer here anymore, and WBLS, which is hanging on by a thread. I mean, these were the stations where we would listen to all of these rappers back in 87, 88, 89. I mean, we made those guys and the stars. We bought their tapes and everything back in the day. And we would be debating about how they were the greatest lyricists. And again, when you listen to Kane's name, King Asiatic, nobody's equal, and he's bowing the knee to Eminem. That's really sad to see, because again, he's supposed to be nobody's equal, but yet he's saying that this guy is on a level of a Kobe Bryant. And again, there were multiple rappers who, again, were way better than your Eminem in the early 2000s. And again, when I think about your Ludacris, your Andre 2000, and many others, they are way better, and they will be my picks for a Kobe Bryant for the 2000s, because again, Ludacris was a superstar in his own right. So I look at that and I'm like, no, he's just way off. Now, that was, again, one of the other sad moments as related to this Black History Month. And it gets even sadder when we start to look at the start of this 2020 election, because at the start of this 2020 election, we start to see the buck dancing and bojangling turning into tap dancing. And it becomes tap dancing because I saw so many Black people starting to buck dance as related to politics. And these Black people, again, showed how off code they were as related to politics. Now, in this 2020 election, you would think after the failure of Barack Obama, Black people would start to really focus on who they were voting for as related to a Black agenda. Unfortunately, many of the older Blacks didn't get the memo about having a Black agenda, and they're starting to start buck dancing and bojangling and tap dancing for these political candidates, offering up endorsements without asking for any sort of tangibles. So a lot of these Black politicians, they have embarrassed themselves this Black History Month by showing how little dignity they have. And it's really been sad to see all of these Black politicians running out at these, even before these primaries, buck dancing and bojangling, jockeying for whatever white candidate they're going to pander to, without ever asking, are they going to support a Black agenda? And you see all of these people trying to find a bandwagon to jump on. And what's really sad is we've seen so many who wanted to jump on the bandwagon for Michael Bloomberg. Now, all the people who are jumping on the Michael Bloomberg bandwagon, they aren't jumping on that bandwagon based on what type of tangibles he is offering. No, they are giving an endorsement to Michael Bloomberg just because he is a part of a certain political party. And they're not looking at Bloomberg's track record as related to Black people, because if they looked at his record as related to Black people, they shouldn't even think about endorsing him, because as someone who has lived in New York under Michael Bloomberg, I can tell you that life in the city under Michael Bloomberg was not that great. Your Michael Bloomberg was not a very good leader, and he practically started the decline of New York City with his policies, like the way he micromanaged the New York City public schools and made them a practical nightmare for any new teacher to come in. I mean, he made it where you needed a master's degree to be a teacher, and he put so many rules and regulations on teachers that it practically was giving teachers nervous breakdowns, and he made life absolutely frustrating for them. And he also created policies that made the rent in New York go so high that the average working class New Yorker couldn't barely able to afford to live here. And he sold the city out and made it an untenable place to live in. And in addition to, I'm going to get to that credit card in a minute, D. Woodward. Um, he made life in New York untenable, but you have black politicians who are sitting there and they want to endorse this man, even though he supported policies like stop and frisk, which led to black boys being targeted and harassed by police officers. And these policies, again, are not something any rational, critical thinking black person would want to support a candidate on, because that candidate has shown nothing but contempt for the black people. I'm glad you enjoy this live stream. If you guys are enjoying this live stream, you guys can donate to the Cash App. And if you guys, because I really need to get some donations in, because I've had some issues with the Patreon. I lost a lot of patrons. So if you guys could donate $1, $2 to $5 to the Cash App, be greatly appreciated. And if you guys could donate to the Patreon so I can continue to do more live streams like this, I would really appreciate it. So if you guys are enjoying the live stream, you could donate to the Cash App so I can continue putting together streams like this, or the Cash App, again, really would help with things. So, but Michael Bloomberg and his stop and frisk it's really was destructive to black communities, almost as destructive as Joe Biden and the crime bill in 1994. And it really led to a lot of young black boys being targeted, because that was Bloomberg's plan. If you listen to video of Bloomberg speaking himself, he said that most of the crime comes from black and Hispanic neighborhoods, and he wanted to send police to black and Hispanic neighborhoods. And what's really sad is your black politicians, they think that even though this man racially profiled black and brown teenagers and black young people, saying that they had most of the crime, they see him as the best choice to beat Donald Trump. And this is a big problem for me with these black mayors and these black congressmen, is them sitting there and saying that, oh, we need to support Bloomberg in order to defeat Trump. But as I see it, you're replacing one alleged white supremacist with another one. And the way Bloomberg talks down to people shows he has the same paternalistic viewpoints of a slave master. I mean, the way he talks about black people shows the same lack of compassion or lack of concern that your slave masters had back in the days of the antebellum South. And he's supposed to be the so-called individual who's supposed to allegedly beat Donald Trump. And that's where I have a problem with your Michael Bloomberg, because people are so obsessed with beating Donald Trump that they're not thinking about who they are trying to support or what type of platforms these individuals have. And your members of the numerous black mayors and black politicians, and even some of these pro-blacks out here, they want to support Michael Bloomberg, not understanding that he is in some ways worse than Donald Trump. But their argument is, we need to support whatever candidate is on the other side because Donald Trump is allegedly so bad. So this is a big problem for me as related to Black History Month, because instead of black people going out here and being leaders and setting a tone and a direction, instead our so-called black leaders are black mayors, are black congressmen, are black politicians, and even some of our black business owners and some of our prominent black celebrities. They are out here buck dancing and bojangling for whoever is in front of them seeking all of this validation and approval instead of understanding that as the people who elect this individual, they need to be coming to you talking about tangibles. So when I look at these individuals, they have no understanding of how politics works. And because they have no understanding of how politics works, they are thinking, oh, we just need to vote for anyone because we need to get the evil Donald Trump out of the White House. Well, as I see it, it doesn't matter what person you're going to elect. The whole thing is you're not getting any tangibles for your vote. Thank you for the donation. But the whole thing is that you're not looking for any sort of tangibles because there is no focus on any sort of black agenda. I mean, when you go out here and vote, voting is supposed to be in exchange for something. And what's sad is we have all of these Negroes going out here and they are just talking about supporting somebody without ever asking, what are you going to do for me? I mean, Latinos, Asians, Indians, they all ask for something that they're going to get. Even members of the alphabet community ask for something that they're going to get in exchange for their vote. And they get tangibles in terms of policy, earmarks, and earmark programs. Thank you, Samuel Barge, for the donation. I really appreciate it. They get earmarks, they get programs, they get something tangible in exchange for their vote. However, you have all of these black people running to Michael Bloomberg, and it's really sad that none of them have learned anything from the 8 years of Barack Obama, and they're just sitting there buying into the false narrative that we need to go out here and get rid of Trump because Trump is such a racist. But when you look at your Michael Bloomberg, he's just as much a racist as people allege Donald Trump is. And you're sitting there saying that, okay, Donald Trump is a racist, but you have a guy who has participated in the exact same behavior as you have alleged Donald Trump to participate in. And you're saying that we need to vote for him because the other guy is evil, but we're supposed to overlook all of the evils that he participated in. I don't know, Luciano, if Martin Luther King will rise as a name in mainstream American social issues because a lot of with Martin Luther King, his own family has betrayed his own legacy. So his name, it'll be iconic, but a lot of people, they're not really into him like they were used to, especially now that he's later, especially the later version, which was talking about black empowerment. Now, I look at, again, what these black politicians and people have done with Michael Bloomberg. And again, it shows how weak black people are. I mean, they reminded me of that Simpsons episode where Kent Brockman was on his knees to hail the ants and never saying, hey, we need to stop submitting to these people and just voting for them for the sake of voting for them. We need to ask for something from them and insist we get tangibles from these politicians because we're the ones paying their salary. I mean, their focus is primarily just support whatever white man is there who has a D next to his name, not ever saying, hey, this guy didn't do anything for us in the last 8 years of the Obama presidency. So why should I vote for any of these people if they're not going to do anything for me? If I'm going to get the same amount of nothing I got under Obama, why should I continue to vote for the next candidate and stop whatever is so bad because we already got bad as it is? I mean, the way I see it, your Democrats fumbled the ball with George Zimmerman, and now George Zimmerman is back suing people when they could have dealt with George Zimmerman and possibly would have had the White House in 2016. Now, they did something about Zimmerman, they would have had everything, but nobody wants to ever think about that point. Now, when I look at all the way people are buck dancing and blow dangling for Mike Bloomberg, again, it seems like they just show how weak, black leadership is. Because I remember I was on Facebook and one of these black females, she put up a post saying we need to support Mike Bloomberg in order to defeat Trump. And she said we needed to support him because, again, Donald Trump was such a racist and so evil. And I put up a post saying, hey, you shouldn't just pick him because he's supposedly not Trump, because him not being Trump is not an argument. And him not having any sort of agenda, for black people shows that he's not somebody we need to vote for. Now, I went back and forth with this author on Facebook, and I was trying to get them to understand that, we elected Barack Obama for 8 years and he did nothing for us. And we shouldn't keep electing people just because they are of a certain political party or because they're not the other guy, because that's not a proper qualification for hiring. Thank you, Monument Films, for the donation. I really appreciate it. But the whole thing is, you're not supposed to vote for somebody just because they're not the other guy, or they are just saying that they're not the other guy. I mean, that's not an argument. An argument is like what I presented a couple of months ago. I had a whole platform as related to if I was going to run for president. I said that if I ran for president, I would have a platform as related to men's issues. I would want to focus on rebuilding the American man. I would want to focus on rebuilding the American man so that he can go out here and be a leader. I would want to make an investment in men. I would want to create programs that would allow men to be invested in. I would want to develop programs that would help encourage men to be fathers and heads of households. And that's how I started my platform. And I also started talking about things like reforming these divorce laws so that in these no-fault divorces, that if a woman files for divorce, what would happen is you would have if they file for divorce and they have a job, what would happen is they would have to go out here and make their own living instead of looking for alimony and spousal support, because in this age where women control most of the job market and have most of the jobs, most of these women can go out here and work for themselves. They no longer need alimony, no longer need spousal support, and that would be cut out, as related to divorce, as related to my divorce reform laws. And what I would also do is talk about reforming the child support laws so that I would also start talking about doing something about the child support laws so that the kids get the money and not the woman getting the money and blowing off. I know that it would turn off a lot of women, D. Woodward, but this is what a platform is. This is how you create a platform. And sadly, I hear no platform from Bernie. I hear no platform from Bloomberg. I just hear, I'm not Donald Trump, but you have to have a platform for what you want to do. And again, my platform was investing in the American man. And because when I look at America, America's men are in crisis. And again, I talk about that in the book, The Man Crisis, because we have so many men who are struggling, so many men suffering, and we have invested so much in women that our boys and our men are falling apart. And if our men aren't out here to build, they cannot build a strong America. So that would be my platform if I ran for president, is I would be talking about rebuilding these American men so they can go out and be leaders and lead America in the 21st century. Now, I know it's going to turn off a lot of those women out here, but a lot of these women, they don't understand how much they need men because they've imbibed so much feminism. They think it's all about female empowerment. However, we look at the box office for all of the so-called woke movies, and we're seeing that a lot of these women weren't really supporters of this feminism because, again, 60% of those same white women voted for Donald Trump, and they voted for Donald Trump because their female nature, they wanted that protection from men, and they wanted those resources from men. And that's going to be a tough thing to beat because, again, white women get their protection and their resources from men, and Donald Trump is offering them resources and protection, but the other side is not offering anything as I see it. I mean, them talking about, raising taxes and is not going to go over very well, and them having these ideologies about new green deals and stuff like that, that's going to be a bit of a problem. And I don't really see a really weak platform, and it's not really strong. It's not a really strong platform. It's not a really solid platform. So I look at the overall platform for, the Democratic candidates. And again, I look at Michael Bloomberg, and he spends more time pandering, and it makes him look weak. And again, the black politicians look weak too. Sun God Ra, a flat tax would work the best because I would support that because it means everybody pays the same tax rate, because the current tax rate right now it's a complete mess. And the flat tax, again, it's a good way to reform taxes, and it would be something that I would put into my platform into also, along with reinvesting in the American man. So those are things that we really need, and those are things that are important as I see it. Everybody paying their way and everybody paying the same rate. Now, the other thing that was embarrassing about this Black History Month is your Dwayne Wade, and looking at your Dwayne Wade and the way he's been behaving. I mean, he's been completely emasculated. And then you have his son out here and him presenting his son as a daughter. That was also quite troubling to see. But again, par for the course as related to the emasculation agenda, which we also saw with the Eternals movie. Now, the Eternals movie is going to feature the first alphabet kiss. And again, they have a black man at the forefront as related to the emasculation agenda. Thank you, Monument Films, for the donation. I really appreciate it. Again, if you want to donate to the Super Chat, you can donate to the Super Chat. And if you want to donate to the Cash App, you can donate to the Cash App. And again, I look at D. Wade, and again, here's a man who has no control over his household, a man who has no control over his family, and he has no control over anything, and he has been completely emasculated and completely cucked. And he's really shows how weak he is, because his son is out here and he's totally destroyed his son, and he's allowing Gabrielle Union to do this. And what he doesn't understand is that Gabrielle Union is a deeply, deeply troubled woman as I see it. She really needs some counseling, because she has not only stripped his son of his manhood, she stripped Dwayne Wade of his manhood. Thank you, Monument Films, for the other donation. I really appreciate it. And she stripped them both of their manhood, because when you have Dwayne Wade standing there in one picture I saw wearing a pink suit and a blouse, she has stripped this man of his manhood, stripped this son of his manhood, and she has emasculated both of these men and practically destroyed both on not only this man, but this boy, and has feminized both of them. I mean, I look at Dwayne Wade, and what he is alleged to have participated in with Gabrielle Union, this deviancy he has participated in with her. And I'm thinking Dwayne Wade might possibly be suspect to allow that to happen in his bedroom. And again, this is all part of another embarrassing incident in your Black History Month. This Black History Month, as I see it, has absolutely been the worst Black History Month in an absolutely long time. I mean, this has been the absolute worst Black History Month I have ever experienced in my life. I mean, it is a far cry from what I was trying to do when I was writing ISIS Imitation of Life. I mean, when I was writing ISIS Imitation of Life, I wanted to celebrate what was great about Black accomplishments, the Black towns, the Black owned businesses, and all of the hard work that people did in that dark period of Jim Crow. I mean, I look at all of the accomplishments that Black people have participated in um, over the history of of the years, and it's really sad to see, Black people destroying the hard work that people participated in over the last century. I mean, all of the great accomplishments Black people participated in over those years to get Black people where they are, and then to see all of these Black people buck dancing and bojangling like it's 1920 in 2020. This is the saddest thing to see, out here, from business to politics to entertainment. What we get are Black people cooning and buffooning, and watching those Black people coon and buffoon. This was absolutely, it's the type of history where it's being made, but it's not famous history, it's infamous history, and it shows the Black race on decline. Because when you look at Black people and they're out here making a complete fool out of themselves, I mean, like your Big Daddy Kane and like your Rakim, I mean, literally tearing down their own legacies, it shows us how deep the self-hatred is in a lot of these Black people out here, that they're willing to actually tear down their own history, tear down their own heritage, and minimize and marginalize their own accomplishments. I mean, that was one of the saddest things about watching the whole Big Daddy Kane and Rakim defer to Eminem, is that here you have Black people out here, and it's just sad to see, them going out here and they're not elevating themselves and saying they have value. What they're doing is saying, I'm worthless, and you can just keep whatever I made. It has no value whatsoever, and that's really troubling when you think about it. Because again, here you have Black people. Thank you, Rudy, for the Cash App donation. Really appreciate it. But it's sad to me to see this. Black History Month again was supposed to be about us celebrating our best and brightest, and us celebrating everything that we do. And it's supposed to be about us saying that everything we do has some sort of value, but we have people devaluing ourselves. And again, this is the saddest part about this Black History Month, and this is why I call this Black History Month a complete hot mess. I mean, this has been the worst Black History Month I have seen in my 46 years of living. I have not seen a Black History Month this bad in my 46 years of living on this earth. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, Black History Month was something that was seen as having great respect, great reverence. People would go out of their way to talk about all of our great Black inventors, our great Black writers, our great Black artists, and how they contributed to American society. And they would go out of their way to protect and preserve our history and share our history so that it would not get forgotten and it would not get lost. But this Black History Month, the first Black History Month of a new decade in the 21st century, the third decade, I believe, this Black History Month, we have Black people instead of us trying to celebrate our contributions and celebrate our legacy. What they're doing is tearing down our legacy and participating in that disturbing behavior, like the bank that created the Harriet Tubman credit card. Now, that was another incident that it had me shaking my head. Here you have a bank, and they're going to make a credit card with Harriet Tubman's image on it. I mean, Harriet Tubman was a warrior, but the way we have treated Harriet Tubman has been egregious. First, we get Cynthia Erivo just literally disgracing the legacy of Harriet Tubman in that minstrel show called Harriet, where they practically destroy Harriet Tubman's name by making Harriet Tubman not the fierce and strong woman who was a leader and someone who fought for the freedom of Black people. No, we get a buck dancing, bojangling, bug-eyed Black woman who practically has eyes for her white slave master. And then we get this Black guy who was never even a part of history written into this adaptation. This, I forget what his name is, but he was presented as this bounty hunter, which was never a part of slavery because Black men were not allowed to hold guns in that slave period. And he's going to be going around, Bigger Long. And Bigger Long's supposed to be going out. He's looking to kill Harriet and get himself a white woman. And this movie was a complete mangling of Black history. But what's even worse was Hollywood, as part of this Black History Month, wanted to nominate Cynthia Erivo for her horrific performance in Harriet for an Oscar. Now, this was supposed to be another, again, Black History Month, another month we're supposed to celebrate our best and brightest people. And your Hollywood wants to celebrate it by giving your Cynthia Erivo an Oscar. Hey, Chris. Chris Brown is the creator of the Omega Black manga. And if you want to get your copy of Omega Black, this is the second issue. I got to get the first one. You can head over to Amazon.com and pick up Chris's Omega Black manga on Amazon. It's great, fun Black manga. It features positive images of Black people, and you can get your own copy of it on Amazon. So, Chris, I'm glad to see Chris is here, and I'm talking about Cynthia Erivo. And you're welcome, Chris. I want people to pick up your manga and you get more readers, because I want to see more positive images. And again, Chris had a major accomplishment in South Carolina, I believe. They featured his Omega Black in a display in South Carolina. So he's moving forward and doing some great things. And he's putting positive images out there. But this Harriet getting a nomination for an Oscar, that was another embarrassing moment as related to Black History Month. I mean, here you have the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences, and I believe she was the only Black nominee for Best Actress, and she gets a nomination for playing a mangled version of Harriet Tubman, which shows us how little the mainstream media regards the Black image and how little it respects the Black image, because here we have your Cynthia Erivo practically playing a complete clown version of Harriet Tubman, basically a mammy version of Harriet Tubman. And this is going to get an Oscar. But again, par for the course for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences as related to portrayals of Black people, because they have only been nominating Black women to play mammies since the days of Gone with the Wind, and Oprah Winfrey, who got a nomination for The Color Purple, and Halle Berry, who got a nomination for playing Letitia Musgrove in Monsters Ball. So the only images that seem to get nominations for Black media, again, are negative images, but that's par for the course for Hollywood, because it's the same Hollywood who thinks it's okay to have Billy Porter in a dress on Sesame Street. And again, another embarrassing moment for Black History Month. Oh, Billy Porter is going to Sesame Street, but he's going to Sesame Street wearing a dress, and this is going to be presented to Black children. And this is what, again, is very troubling about this Black History Month, is all of these images targeting towards young Black children, and it's about indoctrinating those young Black children into these dysfunctional narratives and making them think that these narratives are something that they need to see as perfectly, normal only for Black kids, because we don't see anybody presenting whites or Asians in dresses on Sesame Street, nor do we see them focusing characters like Eternals at Black people. We don't, not at white people. We don't see any whites or Asians being presented that way, and we don't see that happening. But if you call it out, you are a ist or a phobe. And again, I find that to be quite troubling, because everybody takes the Black man and they present these images out here. And again, all of these things were announced in Black History Month, the month that's supposed to celebrate the very best about Black people. We get the very worst as related to the Black community. And that's the saddest thing about watching this Black History Month. Again, I grew up, when I was a kid, Black History Month was something that was respected. Black History Month was something that was revered by Black people. I mean, you could go to an Ebony or a Jet, and they would have sections that would show respect for our great Black inventors, our great Black scientists, our great Black doctors like Dr. Charles Richard Drew, our great Black artists. I mean, there was a whole section that showed, respect for Black people, and that was something that was important for Black people. I mean, when I was watching shows like The Cosby Show back in the day, I didn't appreciate many of those images until I got older. And again, those shows tried to show us respect for our Black image, but it seems like, sadly, in 2020, people aren't really appreciating, or having a sense of Black pride, because I wonder sometimes what happened to Black pride over the last couple of years. Did we lose it around the time, Halle Berry won the Oscar for Monsters Ball? Because that's when I started to see a noticeable decline in the last 19 years. And did something happen around that time that led to this? Because I have not seen buck dancing and bojangling this bad in my life. I mean, I feel like I'm in the 1920s or even the 1820s, because the way Black people are behaving these days, I mean, it's the cooning and buffooning. It's on a level I have never seen in my life. I mean, it used to be Black folks had some kind of dignity, had some kind of respect for themselves, and you wouldn't see them, just dropping to their knees for whatever white person that came around, or looking to seek the validation and approval of another white person. I mean, again, even in the 1920s, you had Black people who were looking to build, looking to develop themselves, and looking to elevate their own people. But these days, I look at a lot of Black folks, and I'm not seeing that interest in having a sense of pride, having a sense of self-worth, having a sense of self-esteem and saying, hey, I have value as a black man. I have value as a black woman. I value the accomplishments of other brothers and sisters. I value my own accomplishments, and I value myself to say that I have value as a black person, and my contributions have value as well. I'm not seeing that from this Black History Month, and I'm not seeing it from black people. And it looks like we're taking some serious steps back as related to being black and loving black. And that's something that I find to be, again, quite troubling, because when I look at black people and I see them out here practically tap dancing, um, like I saw with a lot of these black people as related to Michael Bloomberg. I mean, that was really sad. I mean, here you have these politicians saying, "Oh, I'm running for office," and never saying, "Hey, what are you going to do for me? And if I'm not getting any tangibles, I do not vote." This is something that, again, Professor Black Truth talks about, and I can agree with him. If you're not getting any, if they're not listening to your agenda or your tangibles, then there's no reason to vote for any of these people. And you don't vote for a guy like Michael Bloomberg, who has shown you no respect, because I can look at cases like Sean Bell. I can even look at the case of Khalif Browder again, and you're going to sit there and say, "Oh, Donald Trump is so bad." Well, how good was it for Sean Bell? How good was it for Khalif Browder, who spent practically 3 years in prison before he committed suicide? He spent 3 years in prison because Michael Bloomberg, who was running the city, the prosecutors in the Bronx could not get that boy a speedy trial, something that was guaranteed to him under the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution. But you're going to say that he's better than Donald Trump, even though he had no regard for those black boys' rights, like Sean Bell or Khalif Browder. And he wanted to practically micromanage the teachers in the New York City public schools to the point where many had nervous breakdowns and anxiety attacks, because I know this because I've had family members and people, they had to deal with that. And he wanted to micromanage people by telling them what they could eat and what they could drink. I mean, this is not a man who anybody would consider, but your buck dancing, bojangling, step and fetch it black politicians, they are willing to endorse this man, all because they want to get a few crumbs from his table. And what they want to do is get paid at our expense and lead to our communities winding up in the same bad place they were before. I mean, people saying, okay, Donald Trump is so bad. But again, that argument does not play for me, because I know that Donald Trump is somebody that people don't see as qualified to be the president of the United States. But the alternatives that are being offered are just not high quality. And if these individuals cannot put together a simple agenda like I can put together, again, it may not get a lot of votes from women, but at least I can put together an agenda and a platform by saying, at least I want to do something for America, as like investing in America's men, building up America's men, helping American boys grow up to become strong American men. At least I can say I have an agenda. But your politicians are not saying anything about what they want to offer the country as related to a vision. And again, listening to Michael Bloomberg talk about the Central Park Five and delay their well-deserved compensation for the time they spent in prison, how is he any different from Donald Trump, who took out the newspaper ad regarding that horrific act and saying that something needed to be done? I mean, if I look at it, there are two sides of the same dysfunctional coin. And what's the use of getting rid of a Donald Trump or a Michael Bloomberg? But again, your black leaders, they are willing to sell out the black community for a few crumbs of bread. And again, it shows us how weak black leadership is, because your black leadership has just pretty much crumbled into dust. I mean, they're just absolutely sad and sorry. And again, they just show us again how sad they are, and it's embarrassing to see them behave what they are. So when I look at again Black History Month for February of 2020, I'm hoping that this is not the start of of a really of the decline of Black History Month, because seeing all of this stuff out here, you know, it's it's really sad, because again, when you think about what Black History Month was, if you had lived in the 80s or the 90s and grew up with truly great Black History Months where people were out here, they would make movies showing us the great Black people and the history lessons, and they would, take time out to show you all the great Black history on networks like UPN and WB, or even NBC and CBS back in the 80s. Black History Month used to mean something to people, but these days it sadly doesn't seem like it means much, not to Black people. And the sad part is we don't see the value in being Black. And that's one of the saddest things about this Black History Month, is that you have Black people who don't value Blackness, and they don't have enough value in Blackness to show pride in the accomplishments of our great Black people. And that's something that I really would want to see people start to appreciate, what we bring to the table. And we need to see that more out here, people showing value in being Black, value in Blackness, and love for being Black. That's what Black History Month was supposed to be all about. It was supposed to be about us loving our Blackness, loving the accomplishments of other Black people, becoming inspired by those Black people, and going out to build on their accomplishments and take Black people to the next level. I'm going to get ready to wrap up tonight's stream, and I would really appreciate if you guys would pick up the books of the SJS Direct 2020 catalog. John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, was going to be in digital on March 10th, but you can get the paperback of the regular edition with the Mike Williams cover or the Josh Howard variant cover on Amazon.com. And you can also pick up ISIS, the Main Event, which will be on digital in April 6th. And you can pre-order the Kindle version, or you can pick up the paperback version of ISIS, the Main Event, and John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose. You can also pick up the Man Crisis on Amazon.com as well. And you can also pick up the books of the 2019 catalog, ISIS, All That Glitters, Eve, Goddess of, and John Haynes, Dark Succubus. All of these books are available on Amazon.com, and they all feature positive images of Black people, balanced, humanized images of Black people. And yeah, Mobar, I'm going to try to give refreshed covers to ISIS, my sister, my friend. I already gave ones to ISIS, my sister, my frenemy, and ISIS, the Beauty Myth. So I am planning on giving covers to Amari's Revenge, and Ultimate Fight, and Power of the Princess. So if I can find an artist to work with, or I can get enough donations, I can hire somebody else to refresh those covers and redo the page layouts for all of those books. So I have plans on redoing the covers of those books the way I did for Beauty Myth and My Sister, My Frenemy. I just got lucky. I ran into Musi J. Nkosi from South Africa, and he wound up designing the covers for those two books. I got a good rate from him, and I was able to refresh those books and get them out there. But I'm planning on redoing those books, and I hope if I can get the money together. Again, if you guys donate to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App, that's the money I use to pay for those covers, and that's the money I use to pay artists. Again, I support a lot of artists out there like Bill Walko, Mike Williams. So all those artists get paid from the donations to the Patreon and the PayPal and the Cash App. And again, I'm planning on getting those books refreshed sooner rather than later. So I'm planning on doing another live stream tomorrow, and I'm going to be talking about Dan Dido leaving DC Comics. That one is going to be 9 o'clock p.m. And that one, I'm going to talk in depth about the recent termination of Dan Dido from DC Comics. Well, the reason why they don't get any representation in endurance or technical sports is because a lot of black people don't pursue that. So that's why they don't do that. So what I want, I'm hoping to be back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. and I hope you'll be there for that stream where I talk about Dan Dido being out at DC Comics. And I hope you guys have a great evening. And I hope you'll be there for tomorrow's stream at 9 p.m.